Hey guys, how's it going? Today we are back in with some more Anno 1800, and today we are doing my one island challenge. No DLC, no mods. Well, okay, there is one mod I'm going to use, and we'll talk about that later on in the video when it comes time. But I wanted to see if I could challenge myself to build a World's Fair for a victory condition on a difficult medium island with very few resources available to me. If you enjoy what you're watching, be sure to leave a like and a comment down below. I know it sounds corny, but it really does help the channel out quite a bit. This challenge is going to be a lot of fun for me, and I'm really looking forward to it. So sit back, relax, and join me as we build an entire city and a monument on this little bitty island. So here we are with our one little island that's going to be our home. This island has exactly what I was looking for on our first and only island. I needed grain, fur, one iron mine, and at least one coal mine. This one has 4. We're probably not going to use most of them, but it does give us a few resources to get started, and these are all the resources I'm going to need locally. Everything else I'm going to be able to produce through items and trade and all the other fun mechanics that Anno 1800 has for you. We're going to use our initial 40 timber that we have on our flagship to build a marketplace and a handful of houses until we use up the entire supply of timber. Then we're going to put down just one sawmill and one woodcutter for right now. Space is a little limited and workforce is going to be limited on this island, so I'm going to have to learn to deal with less early on. I'm also going to put down a fishery once that is unlocked, as well as putting down one framework knitter and one sheep farm in order to supply everything that the farmers need to start in order to upgrade into workers. You also want to go ahead and build a fire station and a pub as soon as those are both unlocked. The fire station will help deal with fires, and the pub is going to increase your happiness, which will decrease the chance of riots on the island. Now, something I decided to do really early on was go ahead and lay out space for the World's Fair so I wouldn't forget, because I'm notorious for forgetting things, and the World's Fair is going to be a big one. The World's Fair itself is 18 by 22. It's really easy to lay out because that is 6 houses by 7 houses plus 1 extra tile. That gives you the interior layout, and then you just bound that with roads on the outside, and there you have a pre-placed spot for your World's Fair for later, and you can move that around as needed if you decide you want to move it later on, depending on how your city grows. With all of our farmers' basic needs met and they have a tavern for at least a little bit of happiness and income, I'm ready to go ahead and move into the worker phase of the game and really get the ball rolling with more production chains and a lot more complexity that's going to start coming our way. But first, there is another thing that I do want to lay out before I forget about it and leave myself a little bit of space. So what I'm doing is I am drawing out the early phases of where I plan on having oil power plants and railroads later on. There's lots of different layouts that are available for already implementing these kind of things into your city, but those are usually for larger islands like big islands or like Crown Falls sized islands. They don't really work well for these medium and small islands. So I can't really use a pre-placed layout, and instead I'm having to kind of figure it out as I go. So I'm laying out a 5x5 area for the power plant, leaving an extra tile in front. So technically it's a 6x5. That way I have place for the train tracks and everything to go. And then I'm going to draw out single lines using trees, ornamental trees, to where my train tracks are going to go later on. This gives me a visual representation of where my train tracks and where my power plants are going to be. And I can kind of visualize the radius around it and consider the reach of it on the roads and stuff later on. And if I need to, I can move it around as needed later on in the game, but this right here at least gives me an idea of where I want to start positioning stuff as I build out. Now I am going to start buying steel beams and bricks. It's actually way better to buy steel beams from Archibald Blake early on. 1 ton of steel beams from Archibald costs 146 coins, compared to the production cost of 1 ton of steel being around 223 coins per minute on maintenance, plus you need 360 workers for the chain. It's way better just to buy those from Archie. Bricks are a little bit more expensive to buy from him, but I'm not worried about that, to be honest with you. Plus I don't have clay anyway, so this is just part of the challenge. So this is the stats screen for the game. This is where you can see everything you need to know to manage your economy in Anno 1800. I'm not going to get into all the specifics on how everything works. I have plenty of other videos about that on the channel. Be sure to go check those out. All you really need to know is that the blue bar is your demand and the green bar is your production. You want to always make sure your green bar is equal to or greater than the blue bar. Don't worry about the numbers in them. Just look at the nice pretty colored bars and make sure that they are in balance. So from here, I decided to start laying out where I wanted all of my industry at. I decided to put all of my farming and everything up on the cliffs above the city. And I'm going to tightly compact all of my farming around one single trade union. And we'll talk about trade unions here in just a moment. With space being such a premium, I knew I was going to have to use every trick I had in order to produce all of the goods necessary on this small island. Now on the southern part of the island, I have a lot of mines right here, and these mines are going to be really critical later on for how I achieve some of the late game stuff that you normally can't do without something like oil wells, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So this is where I wanted to set up some of my industry right here. Mostly it's going to be for charcoal kilns, however, using a trade union right there. And the charcoal kilns are going to be producing something unique for us that we're going to have for the World's Fair later on. But I wanted to go ahead and start stockpiling it. With everything I needed, I went ahead and started laying out where I wanted that trade union at to cover as much of my farming as possible and hopefully cover all of my farming. And then we have the trade union that's going to be coming in and covering all of the mines possible. I can get 3 mines right here around one single trade union. That's going to be absolutely perfect, and it's going to give me everything I need for later on. As I've continued advancing my population and upgrading more farmers into workers, we have unlocked the bread chain as well now. Bread is one of the first more complicated chains, where it is 2 grain farms to 1 flour mill to 2 bakeries. However, in the early game, you don't need that much bread, so you can easily get away with 1 grain farm, 1 flour mill, and 1 bakery. So now we're going to bring in some items from the Grand Gallery via Paloma. The Grand Gallery has a handful of select items that you can purchase using golden tickets that are awarded from the World's Fair or scenarios. The items we're going to be using I will cover in more detail as we get to them. With items in hand and more building material that have been delivered from Archibald Blake's harbor, I am ready to start upgrading our farming areas and getting all of my blueprinted buildings turned into actual buildings. We're going to get the trade union online, and we're going to slot in our first specialist, and that is Faraz Al-Sarami. He is a well-known item. Most people are very familiar with him. He increases productivity by 50%, as well as decreasing maintenance cost and workforce costs by 10% as well. All of this increased productivity and all these new industries means I need more warehouses, but I also want to move my current warehouse. It's sitting in the middle next to my trade union, and that's really not ideal. You want your warehouses outside of the radius of your trade unions. That way you're not taking up valuable space and you can get more production within it. Now, I do want to build a second warehouse instead of upgrading the first one. The math is basically this. A basic warehouse costs 20 maintenance, 10 timber, 500 coins, and comes with 2 loading ramps. The first upgrade for the warehouse increases the maintenance to 50. It costs 20 timber plus 20 bricks to upgrade it and 2,500 coins, and you only get 1 additional loading ramp. So it's actually cheaper in the early game to just build a second basic warehouse instead of upgrading your first one. So the last thing we have to produce for our workers is soap. Soap is very similar to bread in that in the early game, you don't need the full chain that consists of 2 pig farms, 2 rendering works, and 1 soap factory. You can get away with 1 of each. However, the difference is that with soap, you have to watch for your demand to pass 50% of your total production. Once you've done that, then you add in another pig farm and another rendering works. Since technically the soap factory is only working at 50% with only half of the required input. I wanted to go ahead and set up a shipyard as well as a sail maker, just in case I wanted to produce any of my own ships. I do like to use schooners on occasion, and you cannot buy schooners from Archibald Blake. You can buy clippers from him, starting at 1 Artisan. They cost about 15,000 coins to purchase from him, but I wanted to go ahead and set this up just in case I wanted to build my own. Plus, sails are a really easy sell in your trading post, and you can make a little bit of cash from them. With 750 workers and our school now unlocked and placed, we are ready to upgrade into artisans. We're going to upgrade as many as we possibly can, check our statistics screen just to see where we're at with all of our productions, and if there's anything we might need to adjust, and then we're ready to move in to the mid-game of Anno 1800. After upgrading all of those artisan houses, we're a little low on construction materials, but that's okay because I have more coming in from Archibald's Harbor. However, I do want to go ahead and blueprint down where I'm going to have our next building material chain, and that's going to be the windows. But I'm only going to place down a single window maker. They are pretty expensive buildings and they take a lot of workforce, and I'm not in any kind of speed run right now, so I don't mind letting that slowly tick up over time. We're going to place these for the moment near the coastline, near our existing trading post. However, later on, we're going to move those to the south of town where I plan on having our major industrial district. With our first artisan, we can now purchase clippers from Archibald Blake. I went ahead and grabbed a couple because I needed to get some trade routes going. I've been manually buying construction materials from Archibald's Harbor every so often in between doing quests for the AI to build my reputation and stuff up and to get cash from them, but it's time to automate all of that. Our first trade route is going to be to Archibald himself, and we are going to buy up to 50 tons each of timber, bricks, and steel beams. The other trade route we're going to go ahead and set up is for rum from Madame Gehenna. Artisans want rum as a happiness need, and workers can also use rum as a lifestyle need, so you can get some more workers and more coin out of them. So now it's time to supply some lifestyle needs to our workers. We're going to give them beef and rum. Now, these are completely optional. You do not have to do lifestyle needs. Some lifestyle needs are way too expensive to justify the extra production for what you get from them, but some stuff like beef or rum or clay to artisans are really, really cheap, and you do get a decent bang for your buck out of those. So we're going to go ahead and supply these and get a few more workers. That way we can upgrade more worker houses into artisans. Now that we have a few windows, we can upgrade our first town hall and get it slotted in with the items I'm going to be using for the majority of this run. The actor, Mr. Garrick, and Joseph Beaumont. The actor supplies rum and canned food to all houses that also have the variety theater need fulfilled. Mr. Garrick provides pocket watches and jewelry to all houses that have a bank. And then Joseph Beaumont supplies cigars to investor houses that have the members club need fulfilled. These three items are super, super powerful. That's 5 production chains that we don't have to worry about. Alright, it is time to set up the industrial district of our city. Again, we are going to try to pack everything that I possibly need to complete this challenge around this one trade union for all of our heavy industry. That means I can only use 3 specialists right here, but I think I can get away with it all in this space and everything and make it all work. We're also going to be starting up our smaller secondary industrial area that's going to be mostly woodcutters and charcoal kilns. Now these areas are going to get access to a power plant later on that's going to split the difference between all of these areas to try to maximize the coverage of the power plant and get that electricity boost when we get to that point in engineers. Now, why do I keep talking about charcoal kilns? Now that's because I'm going to be using an item called the Park Ranger. The park ranger increases the productivity of charcoal kilns by 30%. He also produces caoutchouc at a rate of 1 ton of caoutchouc every 5 cycles of the charcoal kiln. So every 5th time the charcoal kiln puts out charcoal, it's also going to give us 1 ton of caoutchouc. I need 300 tons of caoutchouc for the World's Fair later, and this is how we're going to obtain it. Now that we have the caoutchouc and stuff up and running with our charcoal kilns, it's time to get our sewing machines up and running. So we're going to start over here at the trade union that is the center of our industrial district and get those set up and ready to go. Now, it is a very expensive chain to get up and running. However, sewing machines do pay back in dividends. And as long as you keep upgrading your houses and you maintain the minimum amount of workers and farmers that you might need for later on, and just upgrade more houses into artisans, you're going to make that money back pretty quickly. Now, there is one item that is going to be extremely critical to the success of this challenge, and that is Bruno Ironbright, the engineering giant. He is probably one of the most broken items in the game. He increases the productivity of a number of factories, including the sewing machine factory, by 50%, and it produces advanced weapons and steam motors every 3 cycles. That is absolutely absurd. We are going to be selling all of our excess advanced weapons and steam motors, and we're going to go from a measly 30,000 to having millions of coin very, very rapidly. It's absolutely absurd how quickly you can make money from this. I don't do things like soap or pocket watch turnarounds to Katima and Land of Lions anymore. All I do is bring in Bruno through Paloma, and I make bank. In between the big stuff, such as laying out industry and deciding where things are going to go, I'm also continuing to manage my city itself. I'm upgrading dirt roads into paved roads to extend my service coverages of my fire stations and marketplaces and all the other public service buildings, and I'm continuing to upgrade houses as I get building material and expanding the city a little at a time. So with 900 artisans, we have unlocked the need for the fur coats. We're going to be using Master Craftsman Frank to produce those. He replaces the need for furs with iron and cotton fabric with wool, as well as a few extra goods that we can sell in the trading post for some extra cash. I'm also going to do a little bit of production management. We're going to increase the productivity of our iron mines by boosting the working conditions by 50%. It's going to lower the happiness, but it gives us more iron, and we're going to put down another sheep farm. I'm also going to set up a new trade route to Eli, and we're going to start buying iron ore from him, as that is going to be one of my bottlenecks going forward. So after a decent amount of city expansion, I'm checking our stats screen and I'm seeing that I am underproducing a few things, namely bread and sausages. So I'm going to go and I'm going to expand that production out just a little bit. We're just going to add in 1 extra bakery and an extra grain farm, and I'm going to add in 1 more slaughterhouse and 1 more pig farm, just to move those green bars up above the blue bars, so I know that I am producing enough and I have a little bit of headroom for some more expansion. Now I have to make a little change over here in our industrial area. So I'm setting up another trade union over here by an iron and coal mine, and what we're going to do is I'm going to move the fur dealer over there and move Master Craftsman Frank over there with him just temporarily for the time being. Now the item that I'm getting now is Dario the Mechanical Engineer. He replaces the need for steel with just raw iron ore, and you also get pocket watches and gramophones every 8 cycles. Again, really, really nice item, pairs really well with Bruno Ironbright. And the pocket watches and gramophones you can use and sell, or you can supply them to your investors and engineers later on as happiness needs. Either way, he's a really great item, so I definitely want to slot him in, so I'm going to do a little bit of reconfiguring. Now that we have our industrial area kind of reconfigured and stuff moved around, I'm going to go ahead and set up most everything that I have not already done in the trading post up to passively sell. This is a great way to make extra money from your overproduction and just keeps everything running like clockwork. Some stuff you definitely want to make sure you're selling, such as my sewing machines, because if those cap out and the sewing machine factory stops producing sewing machines because of a full warehouse, I'm no longer going to also be producing the advanced weapons, steam motors, pocket watches, and gramophones. So I want to make sure those are also always being sold and I'm not maxing out on them. With 1,500 artisans now in the city and our first university placed, we are ready to go to engineers finally. So we're going to upgrade a handful of those, and then we're going to take a look and see how long I've been playing. So I am at 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 15 seconds. Now that's real time, not game time. The game time is probably going to show much longer than that, but in real time, I've spent an hour and a half to get this far. I'd say that's not too bad considering most of it has been sitting around doing quests and waiting for building materials off camera. Now I decided to create a few quick trade routes. One of them was to sell off excess steam motors and advanced weapons because the AI was not buying those at the time. However, the steam motors does come back to bite me in the butt later on, and you'll see why. Then I set up a smaller trade route just for gramophones and pocket watches. I left these off the clipper because I'm going to do something else with those other 2 slots on the clipper that is selling steam motors and advanced weapons. And I added coffee onto our rum trade route. That way I would have a coffee source from Madame Kahina for our engineers. So here's where we're going to have a little bit of a chat. Obviously, I don't have oil on this island, and I have to have oil in order to make an oil power plant to supply electricity to our engineers and to our industries and advance on in the game. There is an item, Jorg von Malking. He produces 1 oil every single cycle on all mines and cement quarries, increases their productivity by 70%, and also gives 1 ton of gold ore every 6 cycles. Now, he is available in the base game, and he can be obtained a number of ways. The 2 ways that I currently have available to me is to either do rescue expeditions, or I can go to war with Karl von Malking and cross my fingers that maybe he will drop from one of his ships, or if I take over an island. However, I don't want to take over islands because that does defeat the purpose of a 1 island challenge. You can also maybe sometimes get him from quests from Eli or from workers. You can also get him from the public mooring from high attractiveness on your island, but that's kind of outside my league. I'm not going to be able to obtain that. So what I did was I used a mod to add Jorg von Malking to Eli at his harbor. I probably spent about 30 million gold in rerolls. It took me a very, very long time to find him and a lot of money to find him, but I finally did. And as soon as I had him, I removed the mod that adds legendary specialists to neutral traders because, I didn't want it to be too cheaty. I felt like this was a good compromise for me because I don't have days or weeks to spend sitting there praying that I might randomly get him from a drop. And since I did have to spend an absurd amount of cash in order to get him, I felt it was justified enough. There's my confession on how I got Jorg von Malking into my game. He's the only thing that I bought that is not normally obtainable from Eli. And with him, we're going to start producing oil finally. I do have 2 other items that are going to be used specifically on our power plants, and that is the leading electrical engineer, which gives 1 oil every 3 cycles and reduces fire chance by 90%, and the magnetist, which gives us 1 oil every 5 cycles. That's just going to further boost our oil output. So we now have all these starter buildings for the engineers placed. I have a single concrete factory down along with a cement quarry producing a small amount of concrete. It's not much, But again, not playing for speed or anything here, so we're just going to let that slowly trickle in. I also placed down a spectacle factory along with an extra glass maker, and we've also placed down a bronze smeltery. Now I'm bringing in zinc from Eli on a trade route, and I am producing the copper locally from my single copper mine on the island. And we are ready for electricity now. Our first power plant has been built. I did build it down by our industrial area first, because I wanted to go ahead and boost up all of our productions. I placed it in between our main industrial area and where our fur dealer is at, along with the iron mine and that coal mine. This just gives us even more iron, which again is going to be a bottleneck for us as we continue. And then comes the long fun part of the game, I think, where you start having to readjust everything to account for the 100% productivity boost that you get from electricity. There's a lot of going in and out of the statistics menu and checking to see where you're at, adjusting working conditions, and adding more production as needed. I did try to utilize all the working conditions I possibly could without having to build more production buildings. I'm trying to keep everything within that tight little circle around the trade unions, and adding more production buildings just adds more workforce I'm going to have, and I'm trying to keep my workforce as tight as possible. The happiness penalties do get a little bit high, but as long as your happiness is between -20 and positive +19, that is at the level of content. As long as your people are content, you won't see too many riots, even if it's in the negative a little bit, so don't be scared about the negative numbers. I also have some plans later on to offset some of that negative happiness with other items and with the newspaper effects that we'll be talking about later in the video. So I'm not too concerned about that -14 happiness on the farmers and the small amount of unhappiness on the workers from it. I would rather tinker around with the working conditions than having to add an entire new production chain just for what it might amount to an additional 5% needed. But after a little while of messing around with it all, we finally have everything balanced out where I wanted it to be, and I felt comfortable enough to move forward with expanding the city even more. While looking ahead to the future, I realized that my initial placement of my power plant was not going to work where I had it. I had too much overlap from the other power plant, and I wanted to build the city up into this little corner where I have the World's Fair at. So I decided to do a quick bit of remodeling and move my power plant over just a little bit to give me some more space to build the city out and not be so crammed in. After shifting everything around and putting down some poor man's ornaments, also known as the Temperate Grove, it was time to start expanding the city up to where I have the World's Fair at. I copy and pasted a huge section that included the basics of what I needed, including the pub, the market, a fire station, and a police station, and I got those placed down. And then I got distracted by wanting to decorate around the power plant a little bit to give it some separation from the houses. I started scouting out some places for the town hall, and I decided to shift my town hall up and over a little bit from its initial placement on the river to cover a larger section of houses. And then I started just moving all of my engineer homes up and around to the town hall and moving all the farmers down to the other side of the river. This is a quick and easy way just to keep everything together where you need it without having to upgrade and downgrade everything. With all the redesigns finished, I now have a plan forward for how the city is going to grow and where we're going to expand out to. Now, I haven't talked about diplomacy and the AI pretty much at all, but I am playing against Beryl O'Mara, the Admiral Vincente, as well as Karl von Malking. I've been doing as many quests as I possibly can, and once I got them up high enough, I did try to get trade agreements with them all and signing non-aggression packs. Non-aggression packs are really cool because every time you sign a non-aggression pack, you get 10 reputation. It's a quick and easy way to keep yourself boosted with reputation every 5 hours, as well as doing the occasional quest and maybe giving them some money. As long as you do those things, you should not have too much trouble out of the AI, and you can keep them fairly friendly and on side. From here, I'm just focusing on the city again for a little while. I need 1,750 engineers to unlock electricity and light bulbs. Those are the last two basic needs that our engineers will need before we can move on to investors. So I'm actually going to move the World's Fair over just a little bit again because I want to again try to maximize the space around the town hall and get as much coverage as possible. So we move the World's Fair over to the left side of the island and we put a town hall right here that covers a much larger area without the World's Fair taking up all the space. And then we're just going to start building our houses out around it and upgrading those houses as needed in order to get to our 1,750 engineers that we need right now. With a couple more artisan houses upgraded to engineers, we now have enough to unlock light bulbs. I'm going to go ahead and place down one light bulb factory and one filament factory, and that's all you really need for quite a while when it comes to light bulbs. It's a very low consumption good. However, I'm going to place down a second filament factory simply because I need filaments for the World's Fair later, and so this is going to allow me to start stockpiling those for use later on. It's always good to think ahead like this and to stockpile goods that you know you're going to need later on, and once you have that stockpile, you can go ahead and delete the extra factories. So light bulbs are producing and we are making a decent amount in excess. And all of our other consumer goods are looking really good right now. I don't have to worry about adding any more production or tweaking any numbers for a little while. So I can go back to focusing on the city for just a few minutes, moving a few houses around and getting a little bit more upgrades. I'm going to need 3,000 engineers to get the bank, and then I'm going to need 5,000 investors to unlock the final stage of the World's Fair. So the city is not done growing just yet, but we are getting a lot closer to being done with that part of the game. I'm going to go ahead and get our first investors in the city, but I'm going to also go and downgrade them back again into engineers. I simply wanted to unlock the World's Fair foundations and unlock what is referred to as the late game progression milestone. This is a hidden mechanic that's on the back side of the game. You never see this, but game progression affects a lot of different things such as newspapers, quests, trade, war capabilities of the AI and pirates, and quite a few things. But mainly I'm doing it so I can put the World's Fair foundations down and at least be able to have them there and ready to go. And instead, I'm now going to pivot my focus to getting those 3,000 engineers I need in order to unlock the bank. Having the bank is going to give us a ton of money as well as activate Mr. Garrick so we can get pocket watches and jewelry and really boost our income up. And here is the bank. We are ready to build it. Luckily, this is a building that has quite a large radius on it, so you usually don't need too many of these on a normal large island. On this medium island, we're only ever going to need the one. Now, I didn't pre-plan for this and decide where to put it beforehand, but it does fit pretty nicely in a rectangular layout of a 2-house by 4-house with a 1-tile road and then another row of 4 houses, because the bank is 4 houses long. So I found a spot right here, and I'm going to move some houses around, and that is where the bank is going to live now. As soon as that thing is placed, we're going to see my money start skyrocketing, and I'm really, really excited for that. Once you build the bank for the first time, be sure you have a pub, a cattle farm, a pig farm, a sheep farm, and a fishery on your island, and you'll actually get a hidden quest from the investors to get a really cool item called Dennis Brahman, the Food Critic. We'll take a closer look at this item in a little while once I get ready to actually use him. But it's a nice little hidden item that a lot of people miss, so be sure you have those buildings on the same island as the bank and get yourself a nice little item out of it. Now, I have been fulfilling lifestyle needs as much as possible for our population. For the artisans, I made sure to give them wool. I can't give them clay because I don't have access to it. And for the engineers, I gave them soap, since I'm producing so much just from my one soap factory. Now, for the investors, they only have a single lifestyle need with no DLC or anything, and that is fur. It's a low consumption, so a single hunting cabin is all we need, and it does give us a nice boost of 3 more investors and 3 coins per house just for fulfilling the fur lifestyle need. So don't forget this one. Make sure you build this and give fur to the investors because it is going to help you out a lot towards reaching that 5,000 population goal. So I'm starting to do my final check on a few things before I start going heavy into the investors, because my first goal is to get to 1,750 investors and to unlock cigars and chocolate. I'm not going to go all the way to 5,000 investors just yet for steam carriages and the last part of the World's Fair. I want to get those needs unlocked first, and then we're going to go start setting up everything to get the World's Fair running. I'm also placing down our members club. Once I have the building materials, I'm going to get it built, and that's going to activate Joseph Beaumont, who is going to fulfill that cigar need. That's going to have all of my town hall items activated and supplying several high income goods that I can't get otherwise. Now, you can buy cigars from Madame Gehenna, but they are extremely expensive at 2,160 each. So it is just really not worth it to try to buy those. Now, you might remember a long time ago we talked about Jorg von Malking and that he produces +1 gold ore every 6 cycles on all mines and cement quarries that he affects. So that means I'm sitting on a heap of gold ore that I'm not doing anything with. So I decided to turn that into actual gold, or gold bars as I like to call them, because it's not gold, it's a gold bar. Whatever. Anyways, I'm turning it into gold bars. A single bar of gold sells for 1,108 coins. The goldsmith normally produces 1 ton of gold per minute. However, since I have it electrified and a ferrocell cerami on it, I can get 2.5 tons of gold ore per minute. That's roughly 2,770 gold per minute on passive selling right there, just from producing those gold bars. So a nice little boost right there. Jorg von Malking coming in clutch yet again and giving us even more benefits. So we're going to take our Dario money-making trading route, and we are going to change out the schooner for a clipper, and we're going to add the gold onto that and sell that directly to Madame Gehenna to start getting that extra boost of income in. It's time to do a little focus on the city right here. As you can see, we've expanded out a little bit more and we've added more investors in, and I decided to spruce up our harbor a little bit. I love decorating and building out harbors. It's just so much fun to me, and I really haven't done much with that in this video. So I decided to take a little time just to make it look a little bit nicer, add a few more depots and expand out our storage capacity to at least 350. That's going to allow me to stockpile everything that I need to the maximum capacity for the World's Fair. And upgrading a few more engineers now gives us our need for chocolate, which we are going to buy from Madame Kahina and bring over to supply our investors with that. I'm also going to do a little bit more rearranging on the city to make sure that all of my artisans, engineers, and investors are within range of my main 2 town halls on the city, and all of my farmers and most of my workers are outside the main area near the industrial district around another town hall that's going to be using a couple of different specialists here in just a little while. I also realized I needed to move my variety theater up a little bit. It was too far to the south, away from the rest of the main part of the city, so I moved it up a little bit closer to the coastline where it can actually reach and affect the rest of the city that we have been building out here. The houses on the south side of the river near the industrial district are only going to be farmers and workers, so they don't need access to that variety theater. Again, the one thing I always do after doing a bunch of upgrading and moving stuff around is I check my stats screen and see where I'm at to make sure that I'm still producing enough of everything and I don't have any underproductions. With everything looking good, we're ready to move on. So looking forward to 5,000 investors, I want to go ahead and get our last consumer good out of the way and being produced. That's going to be champagne. Now, normally you would place a champagne cellar and 4 vineyards to support that. I really don't have the space for that, so instead I'm going to use a couple of items to supplement our champagne production and greatly increase the output of our vineyards to be able to support a champagne cellar with fewer vineyards. Those 2 items are going to be Alexander Hancock and a medal winning producer. Hancock increases productivity of old world crop farms by 80%, and requires 35% more modules. The medal winning producer increases the productivity of grain farms, red peppers, vineyards, and hacienda grain farms by 40% and gives you 1 ton of champagne every 8 cycles. These 2 items are going to greatly increase the output of our farms that are already being affected by Pharos al-Sarami and allow me to get champagne from the grain farms I have and the vineyard that I'm going to put down. And I'm going to put down a 3rd grain farm. So we're going to have a total of 4 farms, 3 grain, 1 vineyard. All of those are going to be producing champagne, and then I can place down a champagne cellar in just a little while, decrease the productivity on it because I don't need it working at 100%. And that's going to give me all the champagne that I need to complete this challenge. Both of these items can be found at Eli Bleakworth's Harbor. Really, really good items. Very, very useful, even in non-challenge runs. So be on the lookout for these and go pick them up if you see them. I had to do a little bit of rearranging to get the vineyard into place where I wanted it to go, but I still had everything where I wanted it to be. I took the cattle farm away from Faris al Sarami. However, I don't need a lot of beef anymore for the lifestyle needs for workers, so it really wasn't a big deal having it outside the range. And with increasing the productivity through working conditions on the vineyard and checking my stats screen, I can see that I'm producing just enough champagne to supply our current investor needs. It's not going to be enough later on. However, I have a trick that I'm about to show you that's going to radically alter everything when it comes to my consumption rates. So upon reaching profile level 14, I have unlocked a few newspaper articles that are going to be really useful for me. I am going to slot in a 20% austerity, a 10% austerity, and a plus 10 happiness propaganda articles. These 3 articles together are going to also give me an influence bonus called Politico, which increases the effect of newspaper articles by 15%. So what that means is that with the 20% austerity and the 10% austerity plus the Politico boost of 15%, we are going to get a 34% reduction in our total consumption rates for all consumer goods. That is absolutely massive, and that's going to change a lot of things about our economy. We won't need as many production buildings. I can take off a lot of working conditions and ease the working conditions on our farmers and workers. The reason I slot in the happiness is because there is a happiness penalty for using propaganda, and I want to counter that as much as possible. The max is a negative 15 on investors, so I have the plus 10 to help try to counter that a little bit, plus any of the happiness goods I am supplying. We are almost ready to get started on the first phase of the World's Fair, but before I do that, I wanted to go ahead and finish off some diplomacy stuff, and we have the Admiral finally ready to do a trade agreement with us, and that gets all 3 of our competitors on the map on friendly terms with us, and I thought that was a really good thing to finally have done towards the end of this challenge. So I finally have all the building materials I need to lay the foundations for the World's Fair. And once I place those, I take a look and I see that I do need 500 farmers for workforce, and I need 300 cement. This is where I made a little bit of a mistake, and I forgot to set that at the proper amount to be sold at. I was not stockpiling it like I should have been. Now I go into my trade routes, and I don't know why I did this, honestly. I think I was getting super exhausted by this point, and instead of taking the cement off of the trade route or turning around and buying it, I decided instead to go in and set my minimum stock from 50 up to 300. I don't know why I did that, but I did. Don't worry, I eventually do, realize what in the heck I'm doing. Then I also need to consider that I need 500 farmers. Now, to do the 500 farmers, I decide to start enabling the lifestyle needs for them that I don't already have enabled. I've put down another flour mill because we do have plenty of grain being produced, and I enable that for them. And then I decided I wanted to do sugar as well. With farmers, you want as few homes as possible, and you want to max out your farmers in those houses. So I decided to go ahead and finally open up the new world, and I send my flagship down to go do the expedition to discover the region so I can set up a trade route to Isabel Sarmiento to start buying sugar from her. She also gives you a free ship that comes with some timber, bricks, and steel beams on them. That's going to be kind of useful for us. So we're going to bring that ship back with the building materials on it, maybe grab some sugar from her real quick, just to go ahead and boost those numbers up. So I have my 500 so we can get started on this thing. Everything is in place. I have what I need. And now it's time to get the 500 farmers. To do this, I'm actually not going to expand the city more. Instead, what I'm going to do is downgrade everything. I'm going to take the town hall that's next to the World's Fair, and I'm just going to downgrade all of these houses back down to farmers. That's going to give me the workforce that I need, and then I will just keep upgrading those houses back into the next tier as I need workforce from each additional tier to complete each different phase of the World's Fair. And with that, we have 500 farmers ready to go. Our consumption is still not passing our demand thanks to those newspaper articles, so I don't have to worry about building a bunch of fisheries or framework knitters to supply all of these farmers. All I have to do now is click Start Phase and watch that start ticking down. Now, while all this is happening, I'm not being idle in the background. I'm getting things ready for the next couple of phases of the World's Fair. I'm removing the caoutchouc specialist and removing the charcoal kilns because I don't need any of that anymore. We have the 300 caoutchouc. I have plenty of coal being produced. The charcoal kilns aren't necessary, so we're going to scratch those and get that worker workforce back. I also finally got my act together and sent down a cargo ship, and I bought 100 cement, and that's going to be all the cement that I need to finish off this phase of the World's Fair. So we're going to get that back and get that going to correct my little mistake. However, there's another mistake coming up very, very soon that's also going to bite me in the butt. And the last thing that I definitely wanted to go ahead and get started was producing wood veneers. Those are going to be needed as well for the World's Fair. I don't need gramophones being produced. I'm producing those myself from Dario, the mechanical engineer. So I just need the wood veneer production for the World's Fair. So we're going to put down a couple of these marquetry workshops and start stockpiling that for future phases. I need a little more wood production, and I got a druid's sickle from a quest from one of my farmers, and that just increases the productivity and decreases the forest requirements for woodcutters. So I went ahead and slotted that in where the park ranger used to be, and then I wanted to see if I could get rid of the working conditions. I took off the 50%. It kind of took me down a little bit, so I boosted that back up just a fraction, just to make sure I was producing enough wood for all of our marquetry workshops and to get those wood veneers coming out steadily without them falling behind on me. Checking some of our other stocks, I saw that I was full on filaments, so I don't need that extra filament factory anymore, so we went ahead and took that out. And taking a look at our wood veneers, those are coming in really, really quickly now from both of those marquetry workshops being electrified and with ferrocell cerami on them, thinking that I have everything ready to go. Phase 2 of the World's Fair is complete, and luckily the next phase is really, really simple. It's just a bunch of building materials that we already have in excess of, so I know I'm not going to have any trouble meeting the demands for the third phase of the World's Fair. We just have to get those 1,000 workers. Now, of course, I already have a ton of farmer houses sitting here that I can upgrade to start getting more workers. So I go ahead and I upgrade all of those. And then I double check my population tab to make sure I have enough housing space for all of my workers. Now this does include lifestyle needs that I have not fulfilled, such as the bicycles. So I go ahead and I expand the city out with some more housing. That way I don't run out of farmers and I keep the bare minimum of those possible while still getting up to 1,000 workers. So I've added in a few more houses, and then I decided I wanted to go to the other side of the river where I have the majority of my farmers and some of my workers at over there, and go ahead and utilize a couple of items that I've been holding on to and push myself over that 1,000 worker mark, as well as further decreasing some of the goods that I need to supply. So in a trade union over here, we are going to slot in Dennis Brahman, the food critic that we talked about earlier that we got from a quest from our investors, and the Brasserie patron Mertens. Now, Dennis Brahman affects all farmer and worker residences, and he supplies bread, sausages, and fish to houses with the pub need fulfilled. So for our farmers, that's going to give them fish, and then for the workers, it's going to give them all three. It also comes with some bonus income and some bonus happiness, which is good since I'm using a lot of working conditions on my farmers, and that happiness is going to come in handy. The patron Mertens provides sausages, bread, beer, and church to all residences with the pub need fulfilled. So I don't really need the sausages and bread since that's being covered by Dennis Brahman, but this does give me beer and church, which just adds a little bit of happiness and some coin from the beer to our workers. We have discovered the new world, and I am going to go ahead and send the flagship back over to the old world because I don't need him here anymore. We're going to take the Mother Goose, the clipper ship that we were gifted by Isabel Sarmiento. I'm actually just going to dump the timber overboard. I don't need the extra timber or anything, but we are going to dump that overboard. We're going to grab a little bit of sugar from her just to give us a quick boost in our sugar that we need for the lifestyle needs on our farmers. And I'm going to take one of my extra clippers I have sitting around and go ahead and set up a trade route from Isabel to my island, purchasing sugar. That way I have plenty coming in and I don't run out before the end of this challenge and the World's Fair is completed. Having the sugar supplied is going to give us the maximum of 13 farmers in each home that I can have without DLCs or anything. And that's going to let me have even fewer farmer homes on the island. So if you're ever looking to try to maximize the amount of workforce that you're getting with the fewest amount of homes, make sure you're supplying as much lifestyle needs as you possibly can. Also look for items that boost workforce that you can slot into your town hall. Those are really, really awesome. There are several such as the Captains of Industry, which are excellent items for boosting income as well as workforce. I will have to say that I think the city is looking really good right now. We've used most of the available space. We have a little bit of space around our industrial district that I could have added in a few more homes if I wanted to, but I just decided not to. But we're not quite done yet because we still need to get 5,000 investors to unlock the final phase of the World's Fair. Phase 3 of the World's Fair is complete and we are on to Phase 4, and this is where I realized I made a critical error in my trade routes and my minimum stock in my trading post. I have been selling all of my steam motors and I had not stockpiled the 150 that's needed to complete the World's Fair. I don't really have much choice other than I just had to take them off the trading route and just kind of let this one take its time and keep producing more through Bruno Ironbright on my sewing machine factory. I did have enough iron stockpiled that I could have just built a couple more sewing machine factories to pump out more steam motors quickly. I wasn't really in a rush or anything, so I decided just to let those trickle in and take its time. I am producing about 2 per minute right now, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. Now, I guess I wasn't actually recording when I did this because I can't find the footage of it, but I did find 2 items at Archibald Blake's Harbor that I purchased and brought over that helped me with my workforce for workers and artisans. I found the Captains of Industry Volume 31, which provides 40% workforce and 40% income, as well as a 60% chance of illness, which I don't really care about that part. And I found the Captains of Industry Volume 16, which gives 25% workforce and a 20% income boost, and then a small chance of illness increase. I decided to use these on my 2 town halls. The one next to the World's Fair got the 40% boost, and the one that's over by the other side of the river next to my farmers and workers, that got the 25% boost. The 25% boost one gave me enough that I was able to upgrade more of my houses into artisans and onto engineers and investors, and have even fewer of those farmers and workers. And then the one over by the World's Fair that got the 40% boost obviously gave me a significant increase in my workforce that was being dedicated towards the World's Fair itself. So while I wait for stage 4 of the World's Fair to complete, I know that I want to go ahead and make sure I'm supplying more than enough champagne for those 5,000 investors. So I went ahead and I decided to put down my first champagne cellar. The newspaper did pop up again, and I went ahead and slotted in our 30% reduction and our 10% happiness again for the last time in this series. I got the champagne cellar down, and then I decreased the production output by 50% because I just needed a little bit more champagne. I didn't need the full 100% output. I also made sure I kept it away from power because, again, I don't need it powered up. I don't need that much champagne. So we popped that down, we popped down one more vineyard, and that gave us more than enough grapes to supply that 50% production on the champagne cellar, and I had everything I needed now to supply my 5,000 investors. All right, finally, it is time to finish the 4th phase, and we are on to the final phase where I need those 5,000 investors. I have everything in stock that we need to complete this. No more accidental forgetting to stockpile anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to upgrade as many of my artisans as I can into engineers and start upgrading all of my engineers into investors and just kind of keep an eye on how many I have and what I need. We're at 4,500 out of 5,000, so we're almost there. I just need a little more building material. It's kind of been what's slowed me down this entire run is just waiting on building material. So once all of that finally came in, I had my 5,000 and we were ready to start. I just needed 2,000 engineer workforce. So what am I going to do? I'm going to downgrade everything again. That's right. Upgrade everything to get to the population requirements and then downgrade it all back again in order to get the workforce you need. So we're going back and forth with everything. It hurts just a little bit. So with that, we start the final phase of the World's Fair. And I just wanted to take a look real quick right here, and we can see that I am at 5 hours and 13 minutes on this particular save. I can guarantee you the vast majority of this time has been spent sitting around waiting for building materials. And the countdown to the end has begun. We're at just under 2 minutes until the World's Fair is completed, and I cannot tell you how excited I was to finally have this done. It's been a very fun run and everything. Not exactly too challenging in my opinion, it just required a lot of items. Now, obviously, if I didn't use certain items from the beginning from Paloma, this would have been a little more difficult, a little more challenging, taken a lot more time. And 3, 2, 1, and we have victory. We have completed my victory conditions of building a single monument on our little island right here. I have to say, it's actually been a lot of fun doing this. I had a really good time. I actually learned a little bit myself. Even after all this time, I've learned a little bit more about Anno 1800 and some different ways to go about doing things. Now, of course, if I decided not to use items and stuff from Paloma in the beginning and only used items I could have bought from Eli or Archibald or Madame Kahina, it would have been the same outcome. It just would have taken a lot longer. This challenge took me about 6 hours total to do. I imagine if I didn't use some of those items, it probably would have taken me about maybe 8 or 9 hours total. Again, just sitting around waiting on building materials and various materials for the World's Fair to stockpile up. And I'll leave you guys with this pan around of our island after it has been completed. I had a lot of fun with this. If you have questions or comments about this or want to know some more information, be sure to leave a comment down below or join my Discord server. The link is in the description. If you are interested in seeing the full 6-hour uncut edit Let me know down in the comments. This is all kind of a new content format for the channel, so let me know how interested you are in seeing the full long play of this. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.